All right, everybody. Today we have got Lawrence for you. Successful Englishman turned American citizen with all types of experiences in trading, real estate, travel, jiu-jitsu, I believe, as well. Lawrence not only has a darling accent that makes you feel like he probably smells good in person, but also he shared so much with us about how the history of money means that Bitcoin is the greatest money that there is. When you go back in time and look at how different governments were good or not good with their money, when you look at the types of money they chose, you just get to this place where you realize, oh my goodness, Bitcoin is a multi-century or multi-millennia level historic event for humanity. So you've got to get all the way to the end of Lawrence so that you can have the understanding that he has and realize that you must stack your first sats. Here we go, everybody. It's Lawrence. Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. With Sat Chats, we are building the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center to serve as your gateway to generational wealth. So if you're brand new to Bitcoin, we want to chat about sats with you. Head to satchats.com to grab your slot in the studio today. I'm your host, Stuart, Bitcoin Maxi, who wears prescription sunglasses to protect you and your loved ones from my Bitcoin laser eyes.
And I'm your co-host, Chris, founder and CEO of Ithaca Hummus, Bitcoin smash buyer and proud multi-coiner.
So smash that like and subscribe the same way Chris smash buys Bitcoin. Once we hit 999 plus one subscribers, not only will we unlock a live show for you Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern, we will pick one from among you and drop 1 million sats on your head.
That's like $1,000 if you're still in fiat world.
Yeah, if you're still approaching things from the dollar world, yeah, it's like $1,000. But $1,000 16 years ago is a gabillion bucks now in Bitcoin. So get yourself 1 million sats. We will make you a satillionaire overnight. Today on the show, we have got our new friend Lawrence. He has got himself a Bitcoin story that he's going to share with you satillionaires out there today. But before we get into it, Lawrence, help our satillionaires get to know you a little bit.
Well, thank you for so much for having me, Stuart and Chris. And Chris, that's a very sexy mustache. I just want to give you some props. You put it off beautifully.
Thank you very much.
Dude, we got a comment in the comments section about his mustache as well. And I had to respond. I'm like, well, hey, guess what? My beard includes a mustache. Like, I don't get it. Like, why?
Stuart, you've got a sexy beard too. You got a sexy beard too, but that's a bit, you see that more. It takes a special person to pull off the mustache. So props to you both for the facial hair.
Hey, likewise.
Yeah, so I found Bitcoin relatively late. And I think it's such a good story because I always consider myself a very open-minded person. And I was always, I felt like my real education began after I got my graduate degree. And I've always been a huge reader. And I think I've averaged the last 20 years about a book a week. So I've read a lot about a lot of different subjects. And for whatever reason, I just couldn't get my head around Bitcoin. And I remember a few years ago when it had it went up to 20,000, then it went back down to 5,000. And I had this friend of mine from jiu-jitsu. She's a nurse, and she sends me a message, and because she knew I used to be a trader. She says, "Hey, do you think I should buy some Bitcoin? It's gone down to 5,000 now." And I just remember thinking, if a nurse is asking me, it's obviously just a bubble because like nurses don't trade, and it reminds me of the there was that famous thing in the 1929 stock crash where one of the big time traders was getting his shoe shined, and he was getting stock tips from the shoe shine guy, and he's like, well, obviously this is the top of the market, you know. So I couldn't get my head around this internet money, and it was a podcast by Anthony Pompliano, who's a really big promoter on Lex Friedman's podcast. I think that was 2021 maybe, it's around then. And I just, for whatever reason, I listened to that podcast, and it was about Bitcoin, but it was about a lot of other things, about Pomp's life. And it just clicked. And then at the same time, I had a good friend of mine who came over, and we spent 4 hours talking about, he was telling me about, he was, all in on the Bitcoin story. And when you hear it and you actually take the time to understand it, it's very hard not to be incredibly compelled and moved. Because I'm a student of history. I have an undergraduate degree in history. And if you look at, even there was Edward Gibbon wrote this big famous book, The Rise and Fall of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And now they're starting to say, really, one of the reasons was unsound currency. And before, it was never really talked about. They talked about, barbarian invasions and different, bad leaders and all this other stuff. But really, when you look at the root from the fall of the Roman Empire all the way to the genocide in the Tutsis and Hutsis, I think, in Rwanda, it's all about unsound money and scarce resources. So we have these labels like, oh, it's a religious war, but underneath those labels, a lot of the time it's a war over resources. So if you can have a currency, if you can have a way of keeping value, and it's outside these governments, which now we're seeing with Doge and all the craziness coming out right now, how just corrupt these governments are. And then you look at history and you look at the last 100 years in America, and you see how everyone's been losing their purchasing power. You realize that the real challenge is, how do I, these people, you're a doctor, you're a dentist, you work your whole career to make money, and now you have to become a financial guy to keep it in 30 years. So when you retire, you can pay the bills because of inflation. So I just think once you learn the story, I think the story of money is so interesting, because it's the history of humanity, it's psychology, it's reality, it's warfare, it's all these things. It's a fascinating story. So for people, I think what you're doing is amazing. You're trying to educate people and explain like why they should care about this, because I feel like there's two types of people. There's the people that are all in, like us, that are really interested, and there's the people that haven't really taken the time to understand it. And that was me. So I really feel for those people.
I think it's interesting, Lawrence, to hear that you approach this problem from a historical perspective. Because in today's America, we know almost nothing about history. Nothing at all. I mean, most of our consciousness stops at like 1950. Like the American psyche is like, okay, so we won World War II, and then things happen from there. It's like, guys, it literally goes back further than that. It does go back further than that. And when you do study history, it gives you this incredible perspective. And, a good example would be, in today's world, we have concepts of certain things being socially acceptable, for example. And when you go against that social norm, you are ostracized. But in fact, for every single social norm in today's world, I can find an example in history where the complete opposite was considered normal instead. So that means you are living in a world that to an extent can be artificially constructed around you. And the more you study history, the more you can pick and choose what you feel is the correct way to go about things. When I read The Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Ammous, and it looks like you have as well, his history of money exploded my mind. How did you feel? What was that like for you to start going down the rabbit hole to read The Bitcoin Standard and pick up other books?
Well, Stuart, I really appreciate you highlighting the importance of history, because I remember so in England, the college system's a bit different. In America, the way I understand it, the first year of college, you do a lot of different subjects, and then you kind of specialize a bit later. Whereas in England, you got to you're in the last year of high school and you have to apply to colleges and you have to already say what your major is. I was 17 years old. What the hell do I know about my major? So it was between mathematics and history. And I was like, well, mathematics is, 5, 6 hours of lectures a day, and history is like 1 or 2, and it's a lot of self-study. And I was like, I like self-study and I don't want to be in all these classes, so I'll do a history degree. So I got my history degree at a very good college at Exeter University in England. And then I was coming up to graduation, and I've been trading stocks since I was a teenager, and I would always be interested in finance. And then I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with a history degree? So I stayed on, I got my MBA in finance, and I joined a trading company that sent me around the world. I set up my own trading company. I became a multimillionaire before I was 30. It was awesome. But I always thought my undergraduate degree was useless. I was like, that history degree is useless. And I realized the last 5 years, with all the craziness since COVID, that there's so many humans just repeat the same stories again and again. And history actually gives you an incredible understanding of the world, and enables you to predict the future by looking in the past. I think it's so interesting. And now I value my history degree more than my MBA. But that study of history is so important. And Stuart, you mentioned that Safedine Ammous, like that's such a great book. He's written a couple of other books too, and I've read them all. And I love the fact that he gives he's that Austrian economics background. And when you study Austrian economics, like Thomas Sowell, you understand not just money, but like we talked about before, like all the other things that's linked to money. And the reason that I think money is so important is, I always say, you don't want to be the person who misses your kids growing up and doesn't nurture any friendships and lets his health go to the wayside because you're so focused on making money, because you think in 10 years, if I get the promotion and I'm this president of my company and I'm making X amount of money, then I'll be happy. That is completely backwards. If you're poor and miserable, you're going to be rich and miserable. Money is just an amplifier. But at the same time, I believe if you use money wisely, it enables you to buy back your freedom. It enables you to not do jobs that you hate doing. It enables you to buy back your time so you can focus on your health and your family. And so for me, money is not the be all and end all. And I think a lot of people chase it at the expense of things that are more important. But at the same time, if you live in the West, you need to make money. Life is expensive. And we've seen this crazy inflation. And so I'm a big believer in learning about money early. And I have a 4-year-old son, and I can't wait to start teaching him these concepts. I think the earlier you learn about money and finances and figure out a strategy for yourself, the better, So I'm very passionate about just spreading financial literacy. And like I mentioned before, like I just feel for these people. You go to medical school and you study for years, and you go to residency, and you're finally there. You spend 10 years after everyone else is making money, and you finally start to make money. And then if you don't know how to invest it wisely, you're going to get taxed at crazy amounts, and it's going to get eaten away by inflation. And it makes me sad. That's on the high end of people making a lot of money. But what happens if you're a teacher and you're barely struggling to pay the bills and you've got a young family? Like life is really tough for you. So just what you're doing, I give you guys so much credit, is because you're trying to spread this knowledge. And it's not a case of you saying, this is the way it should be. It's a case of you saying, hey, this book is life changing. And if you invest a few hours in reading it, you're going to be upgraded in your thinking for the rest of your life.
It is incredible. And we do feel like it is so important because, to your point, it's devastating to work and earn a form of money that loses purchasing power over time. So either you blow it now and because it's just not going to be worth more later, or you try to save it up, but it buys less by the time you, go to spend it. I mean, and with your background in finance, you might be able to help us understand a little bit more. When you have a nominal inflation rate of 2% or 3%, which is our goal. Our goal is to only suck 2 or 3%. That's so bad. But it's really more like 7 or 8 or 9%. When you get down to the actual inflation rate, the rate at which they print money, maybe it's around 7 some odd percent a year. The fact that we go to the grocery store and it's definitely not only 2% more expensive. It's ridiculous. Like how long do you think it takes in today's world for the purchasing power of $1 today to go to zero
Exactly. Yeah. I think, yeah, with compounding interest, it's going to be about, 35, 40 years. And then if you look at the last century, I mean, we have lost, 90, they say, 97 to 99% of the estimates. But really, it comes from, Nixon going off the gold standard. And we just had the 50th anniversary. I think that was like 53 years ago or something. But if you think about it's pretty remarkable. Back in the day, in say we'll go back to the Roman Empire. You had actual pieces of gold and silver, so that was the tangible asset. And then I understand the idea of it's not the most practical thing to be walking around with gold coins in your pocket. So the idea of fiat currency when it was backed by something made sense, And the U.S. was at Bretton Woods after the Second World War, and they kind of set up the new monetary system that we use today, and it made sense. But then when Nixon came off the gold standard and it was backed by nothing, I actually think it's a remarkable testament to the American empire that we've had over half a century of the world pretty much using the dollars that's backed by nothing. And I think that using this idea of the dollar as the unit of measurement, if you look at a graph of the S&P the last couple of decades, it looks incredible because it's going up and to the right because you're pricing it in an asset that's losing value every year. So I think that we've got to start pricing things in other assets, and it gives you such a great lens to see the world. So, for instance, a lot of people, I work in real estate. A lot of people think, oh, real estate's kind of expensive right now. And I said, is it? You're pricing it in dollars. How much has real estate gone up since the 2009 crash? And how much has the dollar gone down? Like if you price real estate in terms of Bitcoin, it looks like it's free, right? Because Bitcoin's gone up so much. If you price it in terms of the S&P, it looks very different versus pricing it in terms of dollars. So I think you've got to get your head around these different things. Like you can't just assume we're going to price this in dollars and it's gonna give you an idea of value when the dollar is also depreciating. So I think just getting your head around some of these concepts is so important because we have to make these decisions. I've got a 4-year-old son, and I don't want to. I'm 45, and I've had huge swings in my net worth the last 2 decades. And one of them was the mistakes that I made when I retired from trading, and I was a young millionaire who would make every mistake known to man. And then more recently, I was with a developer. We had 9 projects going on when 2020 came and COVID came, and he stole about $1 million from me, declared bankruptcy, and left me with about 5 years of lawsuits, which was very expensive. And so we have these ups and downs in life anyway. So if we can just make smart decisions with investing and learning about something like Bitcoin, I think our future self will be very happy. I don't see any asset outperforming Bitcoin. I think all assets are going to go up because, like we said, they're being measured in this fiat currency that's losing value. But I think by the end of this year, I think Bitcoin will be significantly higher. But I also think, gold's going to be higher. I think real estate will be higher. I think the S&P will probably make new highs. So, because again, it's getting priced in a currency that is losing its value. So I love the fact that you guys are spreading the message. And I love what Michael Saylor says. He says, the challenge is not moving $1 million from New York to Tokyo. It's moving $1 million from today to 2100. It's how can we maintain our wealth in the future and not let it get eaten away. I think that's just such an important concept.
And it's so difficult to think of money outside of the dollar. It is so incredibly difficult as a beginner to make that leap because I own a home and I've watched it go up since I bought it 10 years ago, right? Thinking of my home in Bitcoin terms finally allowed me to understand its utility value. It has a roof, it has doors, walls, and windows. It keeps me safe. We're good. It is not an asset. And it's unbelievable to start thinking of things in terms of Bitcoin.
Let's get Lawrence's take on that. So you're in real estate. You've obviously got a perspective on this. Do you view what real estate do you view as an asset? What real estate might you view as a utility? Do you kind of have a different take on different classes of real estate?
So, Chris, great question. So I believe that there's as the dollar loses its value, things that are real will go up. So, for instance, gold is real. It's been used as a store of value for 5,000 years. Real estate, I do a lot of 3 unit, multi-units for investors that want to put money into something. And for me, that's real because there's a replacement cost of bricks and mortar to build it. And once it's rented, it has a cash flow and a cap rate. So for me, that's a real asset. With real estate, what a lot of people don't realize is if you're renting the home you live in, you're not neutral real estate. You're actually short real estate because you don't even own the place you live in. If you own the house, you're not long real estate. You're not investing in real estate. You're neutral because if you sell it, you have to buy another one if you need a place to live. So I think the idea of real estate being like that, people use it, the sales aspect is, oh, real estate goes up and to the right, so you want to invest in real estate. Well, I believe that real estate is great, but not for that reason. Because Stuart, you said it right. If you price it in different things, it hasn't gone up like people think it's gone up. The good thing about real estate is, one, we need a home, we need a roof over our heads to raise family and live out our older years. So there's that aspect. But really, the benefit of owning real estate comes from all the tax write-offs because the US tax code was written to incentivize home ownership. And so you get all these write-offs. And if you're an investor and you have more real estate than you live in, you get more tax benefits. Depreciation is one of the eighth wonder of the world, I think someone said. But Warren Buffett, I remember years ago, he said gold is, for him, worthless. You could fit the entire world supply of gold into an Olympic-sized swimming pool, so it has no value. But what he missed is it might not have value in the sense that you can't eat gold, but every commodity has a value. Oil is used to power cars, gas. Gold, the value of gold is a utility. The value of bricks and mortar is to build a house. The value of gold is it's the longest store of wealth that humanity's had for 5,000 years. And a lot of the qualities of gold being a store of value is actually mirrored with Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is the gold for today because you don't have to lug around a bar of gold. It can all be done on an app on your phone or in a hard wallet. So I think real estate it's an asset, and I think people should learn about real estate just like they learn about Bitcoin. But they have different tools, and I think real estate it's inflated in the way people think it's appreciated more than it has because of the currency that we're measuring it in. But I think the one advantage as well is you don't buy with 100%, you buy with leverage. So if you buy an investment property with 25% down and it goes up 4%, your down payment's actually gone up 16%. So you have the power of leverage, you have the tax benefits, things like that. So that's kind of the key with real estate investing. But there's still nothing that I think is going to go up and to the right more than Bitcoin because you have, different countries like El Salvador that are putting more and more of their reserves into Bitcoin. And then you have these big funds like BlackRock going into Bitcoin. So I feel like we're on a big shift where it's getting mainstream adoption. And I don't see that changing. I think more and more people are going to want to get in. And like you guys are doing, just spreading the message of why it's so important. I love what you said. You guys started by saying, if you get people in because it's going up and making money, then they learn about it. And it's a lot more than just making money. It's a tool for freedom. It's a tool for us having independence from despotic governments, So I think that's really important. But yeah, I'm a big fan of people finding their niche when it comes to investing. And if you're just a bit older and you can't get your head around Bitcoin, I would recommend you read books like Safadine Moose's books, and educate yourself. But even if you can't get around to it and you say, hey, I'm just going to invest in tech stocks, you're probably going to do okay because they're probably going to be a lot higher in a year or 5 years based on the reasons we're just talking about. So I think it's just getting the people I really feel sorry for is the people that rent the home they live in. Maybe they're, a single mom or a 2-parent household. They're both working. They've got a couple of kids and they're struggling to make ends meet every month. And I love eating eggs. You see the price of eggs these days. Everything's going up so much. Like you said, the grocery bill's gone up a lot more than 2%. It's up like 50% or something crazy. And those people, they don't know any better. So they're always just behind because the grocery bill is going to keep going up. The rent, unfortunately, is going to keep going up. So you just have to get financial education. In Chicago, they have all these programs, for first-time home buyers. You can buy a building for $800,000 that comes with, so you can put down maybe 5%, which is about $40,000. But some of them come with a $20,000 grant for first-time home buyers that covers half your down payment. Then maybe you can get some credits from your lender, some credits from the seller, and suddenly you're buying a building with almost nothing down. You can live in one of the units, you can rent the other two out. That's an asset. So that requires a lot more foresight than what you're saying. Is like this stacking sats and learning about Bitcoin. You got to learn somewhere. It's just so easy now to invest in Bitcoin in any amount you have. You can set up to auto payment. You know, every 2 weeks you get your paycheck, you're going to put 5% in Bitcoin. There's all these ways now. They make investing so easy when you can automate it. And I just think learning about this stuff I think it's the most important thing we can do. Figuring out how to be healthy and figuring out how to have healthy finances, I would say, are the two most important things that every young person should figure out for themselves. And of course, they don't teach it in school.
So you said something there that of course all that was interesting, but one thing that you said that I want to focus on is this idea of freedom. So I think we touched on this a little bit yesterday with number 33, Jameson, but most people come to Bitcoin because they realize it's going to help them make more money with their money. And that's how I approached it. I had $45 to my name, and I knew my wife wouldn't let me spend our actual money on tattoos. And I'm like, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little $45. And when that thing turns into $4,500, I'm going to get crushed. And she won't be able to tell me nothing. Right. And, a lot of people are like, hey, if I put in some money now, it'll be a lot later. And we do spread that message here on the show. But it is the first step for all the satillionaires out there. That's typically called number go up technology. And what we also believe is that after you start stacking your first sats, you're going to start learning more, because you really can't come to understand Bitcoin without understanding money, without understanding who controls it, what impact that has had. And you do start diving deep. You start going deeper and you realize, hey, Bitcoin actually represents not just number go up in fiat terms, but freedom go up. And when you think about the impact of Bitcoin on individual people, on governments, or ways that can be governed, how do you see Bitcoin changing the world from a freedom go up perspective for someone who's never heard that concept before?
Well, the idea of money and freedom, it's an old one, but people really saw it with one of the worst leaders of modern times, Justin Trudeau, when you had these truckers were protesting peacefully the government, and he debanked all the people that tried to support them financially. He debanked them, and he didn't let them. He tried to control their money. And I think it's such a crazy thing to think about what money is. So again, I don't think you should give up your health and irreplaceable moments with your kids growing up and things like that for money. But the importance of money in terms of just giving you freedom, and that idea of, for me, when I was young, I remember when I became really wealthy when I was young. One of the reasons I became wealthy is because my standard of living didn't change. I was 24 years old. I left my trading company. I got one little bonus of 60,000. I used it for a down payment on a 1-bedroom. I didn't have a car. And then I just set up my own trading company and I made all this money, but my standard of living didn't change. And that enabled me at 30 to realize that I kind of fell out of love with trading. And I had loved martial arts. I won the Chicago Golden Gloves. I was doing jiu-jitsu. And I thought, I'm 30 years old and I have a lifetime to make money. But I want to see if I can be a professional fighter and how far I can take it. I want to face my fears and I want to fulfill my physical potential so that I'm not an 80-year-old with a lot of zeros in the bank with regret. So I took a 5-year sabbatical and I had 10 pro fights. I did a bunch of cool things like ultra marathons around the world and all this cool stuff. And I look back at that period now. Now I'm 45 and I'm married and I'm working and I'm busy. And I think that 5-year sabbatical, I'm going to be grateful I did that for the rest of my life. And I did that because I had the freedom of having a lot of zeros in the bank and I wasn't chained to things. So the idea of money and freedom in your life is really important. But money in terms of freedom for humanity, we live in a world, in a country. I'm such a proud US citizen. It took me 23 years coming from England to get my citizenship. I had 4 visas, 2 green cards, and finally I got my citizenship. And I'm so proud of it. Seeing what's happening in England, where people are getting arrested for Facebook posts, they have no freedom. I think the thing that people in America that are born here, they don't appreciate like the constitution we have and the freedom of speech aspect that you have in America, where it's just so prized, the right to bear arms. These are incredible things for freedom. We are struggling with purchasing power of the dollar and trying to keep our money in the decades to come. But we are so lucky. Imagine you lived in places like Turkey or Venezuela, where the half-life of money is 2 years, 3 years, 1 year sometimes. So I think the idea of the freedom aspect of Bitcoin is so important, but it's not. People in the US don't see how important it is, because even though our currency is losing value, it's not an extent like the extent in some of these other countries. But you all know that Bitcoin is global. And I think that is just so exciting, because what Bitcoin gives to people that live in these countries that are just getting crushed by inflation and their currency has a half-life of months instead of decades like we have, it gives them a chance to get out of their broken financial system. And if they make money, they can actually store it and use it for what it's for, which is to live and have value in the future. So I think that aspect of Bitcoin being freedom for humanity, is basically banking the unbanked, is so important. I just think it's that for me is what, when I first started learning about it. And I love humanity. I consider myself a citizen of the world, and it makes me really happy to know that because of this genius Satoshi setting up this algorithm, now 7 billion people, 8 billion people around the world have access to this tool as a store of wealth for their hard-earned money. And I just think that's so important. And that's what excites me. I just think we're living through this crazy revolution, and we don't appreciate so much of it because we're so blessed to have an American passport and live in America.
So he was like, okay, worst leader in the world. Like, here we go. He's going to talk about Kim Jong-un, or he's going to rip on Muammar Gaddafi. Dude dropped on Justin Trudeau, the son of the guy from the 70s, right? Or because the dad ran Canada for a little while too. But I think it's, as a student of history, does the advent of Bitcoin feel like a multi-century or multi-millennium historic moment for mankind?
Yes, because I think I'm a libertarian philosophically, and I think it's the libertarian currency, isn't it? If you look at centuries of history, you look at why did the Europeans leave Europe and come to the US hundreds of years ago? Why? Because in the US, the kings controlled everything, and you were either in the elite and you had things, or you were just downtrodden and you had nothing. So when people came to America, and we still have that legacy where in America, if you're born with nothing and you're an entrepreneur and you make a whole bunch of money and you achieve success in your field, people will respect you. Whereas in England, for instance, there's the idea of if you're lower class and you make millions through business, the upper classes will always look down on you. They always have that very class structure. I think this is the first time in history that you can be outside the financial system, which has been controlled. I mean, think about the Medicis in Italy. For centuries, it's always been the elites that controlled the money, and that's what's led to so much resentment and war and things like that. But it gives. I can't think of anything in the history of money that's more of a seismic shift than the ability for people to store their wealth from something that was created by an anonymous creator. It's not pushed by anyone. It doesn't have a marketing team behind it. It's a collection of individuals that agree that it's a fantastic protocol that is just unmatched by anything else. And they all agree that has value. And it's just, I think there's nothing like it. Yeah. If you look at the long lens of history, we are living through a seismic shift. And I think, AI is coming. There's all these things we're living through. And I think it's a fascinating and terrifying time to try to raise kids today. Like I said, I've got a 4-year-old, and trying to teach him, I can't teach him to be prepared for the future because the things we're living through are so dramatic. I can only teach him to be strong, wise, anti-fragile, and know that whatever happens, he's going to be able to handle it. But I think we are living through it. And I think that's one of the reasons when you actually learn about Bitcoin from the historic perspective, I think that's why you get so excited by it, because it is groundbreaking. And if you love people and you love freedom, and that's funny, That's funny, Stuart. You're right. He's not the worst leader. He's the worst. He's the in the West. He's someone that comes to mind just because we all lived through it. It's very recent. I got recency bias, but I think just the seeing the one of the most shocking things about me was seeing the veneer of civility in 2020, how thin it was with something that I knew right from the beginning. The rules that society follows is very thin. So I want to have the ability to be outside that system, and it all comes with the freedom that America is built on, but we never had it before financially, and now we do. So I think that idea of just the freedom aspect of Bitcoin for me is just so powerful. And I'm so glad you guys are spreading that message.
Do you think the fragility of today's fiat currency is responsible, at least in part, for the thinness of that societal veneer?
Yes. If you look at throughout history, like we kind of touched on, anytime you don't have sound currency, you have more chaos and more violence and things like that. And if you think about the recent inflation that we've had, I'm sure that's causing, some of the instability we're seeing right now.
That's super interesting. And by the way, we are living through a lot of interesting new developments. So let's recap the conversation here, because it's been a wide-reaching one here today with Lawrence. And the first thing that we do, Lawrence, is we ask all of our guests if they'll come back on in 9 months to give us an update on their Bitcoin baby. Would you be willing to do that?
Definitely.
Absolutely. Okay, good. Because there's so much that we I'm sure the Satillionaires out there in the comments, smash that like and subscribe, by the way, if you're listening. Put in the comments down below if you agree with me. We still need to hear about Lawrence's mistakes he made as a young millionaire, because he slipped that in there. I became an early millionaire, then I made all the mistakes you can make. It's like, woo, we want to know which ones those are.
We want to get into that.
Yeah. And all the travels, learning how to fight, the citizenship, everything there.
So much here.
There's a lot more to Lawrence's story. But to recap what we went over, we've got Lawrence, who came from England, right? I'm assuming. I know the United Kingdom is a handful of spaces, but we're going to say England, right? Studied at Exeter, did history there, then got his MBA, went into the world of finances, and started to learn how to trade, became a successful trader, got some zeros in the bank, took a little sabbatical. Let's develop the physicality. Let's learn how to fight. Let's push ourselves. Let's travel. Okay, now we need to maybe transition back into a more settled lifestyle. Let's go get into real estate. Let's get a lady friend. Let's create some progeny. Fellow's 4 years old now. And you are a successful fellow. You do understand finances. You actually can make sense of the absolute swirling maelstrom of lattice work and complexity and nonsense that is fiat currency, and getting loans for real estate and depreciating access. This Keynesian lifestyle, how to actually work that, but you're also able to say, you know what, Austrian economics, hey, which is long form for, guys, we really shouldn't spend what we don't have. And you understand Bitcoin, you understand real assets, the changes that we're going through in this world. And it sounds like you feel deeply for not only the entire world, which doesn't have access to some of the freedoms that we have here in this country, and a form of currency that, depreciates slower than others, but also for the Americans who are inside America and are nurses. They're working hard. They're saving. None of it's making any sense. They can't get out ahead. And Bitcoin to you is this big historic shift that will take us back to an age of sound money, where we can start to build sound lifestyles and sound societies, right?
Where governments are actually accountable to the amount of money that they have access to.
So that was such a great summary, Stuart.
All right. Hey, I appreciate that. It's my pleasure to try to recap that for everyone here today. Now, Lawrence, if you were here in Oak City with us, right, Raleigh, North Carolina, then we would taste some hummus with you here in the studio. But since you're out there in the Windy City, I will serve as your taste buds today. If I remember correctly, your form, I think it was lemon garlic is what you selected.
By the way, is our original flavor. So,
Oh, there you
so
go.
So lemon garlic is original, and then classic comes later.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
Fun fact. So we've got some lemon garlic here. I'll hold up this little. That's the lid. Have you ever heard of Ithaca hummus, Lawrence?
No, it sounds amazing though.
So I'm gonna get a fat glob here.
Me too.
We're gonna try this here for you. Here we go. Cheers.
Wow. You can taste that cold pressed lemon juice.
It just feels like fresh.
So fresh.
Like it has like a brightness of flavor.
Yep.
I almost feel like my mouth is getting cleaner as I eat it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
If Lawrence is out there in Chicago,
Yeah.
for all our Chicago types, where can they get Ithaca hummus?
Yeah. So Whole Foods, Sprouts. We are launching at Kroger, which means Mariano's in the Chicago area. Safeway, Albertsons, all sorts of places. Where do you typically shop, Lauren?
My wife is she runs the house with an iron grip, and she does a lot of delivery services because we're trying to be efficient with our time. So I think she has a couple of different ones, but I think Whole Foods and Costco are both on the list, so we can definitely pick some up.
Excellent.
Drop some Ithaca hummus, lemon garlic. Have her do that. Have her drop that in the next delivery. And then we want you to come back to this video once we've posted it online and put in the comments what you thought, what that experience was like for you.
That's nice.
That's what's up.
Yeah, that's nice.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. I will, guys.
Let's make Lawrence his offer.
All right, Lawrence. So here at Sat Chats, we believe in exchanging our value for your value. You were generous with your time today, and you shared your story with Stuart and myself and our audience. So we're going to give you the choice as a small token of our appreciation between $50 US and $50 worth of Bitcoin. So I've got the Clark Moody dashboard pulled up behind me, and it looks like right now the price of one Bitcoin, or the exchange rate, is $81,550, which translates to 1,226 sats per dollar. So I'm going to type that in here. We got 1,226 sats per dollar times $50. That's 61,300 sats, or the stinky old $50 bill. What's it going to be?
I mean, it's not even a question. I'll take the Bitcoin all day. But listen, that's really nice of you guys. Thank you so much. And it's very unnecessary, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Let's go. All right. So Lawrence, $61,300. Chris, you can place this museum artifact back into cold storage. Where we can just marvel at the ancient technologies that individuals used to believe was a good thing. So, Lawrence, you are guest number 34 on Sat Chat. So you're going to go down in history forever as number 34, Lawrence, and you bring our scoreboard to 31-3.
31-3, what do you mean?
31 guests have chosen the sats. 3 have chosen the cash.
Damn. I'm surprised you released those 3 episodes.
If you made it this far, give us your value for our value. Smash that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Drop down in the comments below the aspect of Lawrence's story that you found the most interesting and the parts that you want to hear more about when he comes back on the show in 9. If you're on Spotify, hit us with those 5 stars. Wherever you are, engage with us, support us, help us chat about sats with every single person on earth, because it is that important. And remember that 999 plus 1. When we get to 999 plus 1 subscribers on YouTube, we will pick one from among you and we will make you a satillionaire overnight. 1 million sats straight from us to you, because we're that serious about helping you stack your first sats. So thanks so much for your time. Remember, Sat Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. Also, our guests' views are their own. Thanks, Lawrence. We'll see you Satillionaires on the next one.